Hello everyone. Today we are gonna be I'm gonna be showcasing a Keqing deck, and with that let's get into the first game. So what is this deck about? Well, it's of course about Keqing, I already told you that, but what's the big deal here? Why am I showcasing this? Well, you get some hints right from there. We are using the bunch of new cards such as the Art of Sleeping Meditation, Science of Canopy, and I think that's it of the new cards. Then we of course have also Storm Terror's Lair, because all of those cards either discount the lightning silhouette created by Keqing's elemental skill, or they give you extra dice. You know, Science of Canopy, when you play this card, it gives you an extra dice. Okay? So because we have a bunch of cards that make Keqing's lightning silhouette very valuable and very cheap to play, we are playing Keqing. But what about my other characters? Well, you can probably guess Kirara. Kirara Keqing has been a combination ever since Kirara's release in TCG. So, I mean, there's nothing really. Do the Keqing skill, do Kirara skill, play lightning silhouette, so that's on basis of 5 damage combination. You know, one Dendro from Kirara, then 3+1 from the lightning silhouette. But then you may wonder, what is the Eremite doing here? Well, firstly, Kirara doesn't do much damage on her own, meaning that if Keqing gets sniped, Kirara alone cannot really, like, the burst is the only thing that does decent damage. So yes, the Eremite is here for secondary damage source. Secondly, it allows us to get access to the Elemental Resonance Dendro cards. Hold on, let's get that over with. It gives us access to the Dendro Elemental Resonance, which is very good, because remember, this does electro damage when we have Catalyze, and it gets increased by the Catalyze, meaning that this card is immediate to electro damage. Because remember, you cannot play the card if you do not have the catalyzing field, and the catalyzing field increases the damage this card does. Okay? So that's why we have the Dendro Eremite. Secondly is of course the technique. For that reason you saw there. It's easy finishes, because like I said, Kirara Keqing combination, it's 5 damage the first time you do it and 10 increased damage after that. But the technique gives us a nice way to get that last bit of damage in. Of course, we are also using Keqing's talent card for a little bit of extra damage. But I'll continue explaining in the next game. Following up on that explanation I was doing earlier, that is just a moment ago, but for me it was earlier. Why specifically the Eremite? Not only because of the technique, but also because of this.
Let's go. Time is against us.
Do you know what the Eremite's talent card does? No? Well, let me tell you. The Eremite talent, as it says right here, when you switch to the character with this technique equipped, deal 1 Dendro damage. Of course, only once per round. But it does the exact same as Kirara's skill, damage-wise. Meaning you do not even need to go to Kirara if you get the talent card. Because now, when we do get the burst, and we get the technique from the burst, we can straight equip it to the Keqing, use the lightning silhouette and get that 5 damage combination. And that's why we have the Eremite here. And at this point I should say this deck is actually stolen. I did not come up with this. I ran into this deck while playing a different meme deck, trying out, you know, new things. I ran into this deck and I was impressed because of how clever it is to use the talent card from the Eremite. Like, I didn't even remember the Eremite's talent card did something like that. And I was simply put, I got wrecked in that match. And I decided that, hey, that's such a good deck, I should try that myself. And it is a good deck, but it's not a perfect deck. There are still many, and I mean many, different decks that are able to do just far bigger combos of damage than just, you know, Lightning Silhouette and one Dendro. But this, like, the biggest strength of this deck is the fact that you can do, if you have the setup, you can do a bunch, and I mean a whole lot of Keqing skills. That is the strength of this deck. Because once you have 2 Scions of Canopy, you have 2 Storm Terror layers on the field, the amount of attacks your Keqing can do gets astronomical. And that's when this deck truly shines. You can see there, that was the technique doing a Dendro damage immediately. And that's why, I gotta say, like, the guy who came up with this deck, great job. This is really good. And I'm happy I have stolen it. Because I do think, you know, this is a great combination to try out. But yeah, like mentioned, you do have to be careful. I have only healing I have in this deck is 2 Mystic Soups. So, you know, if Keqing gets sniped, you are kind of screwed.
The show's only just begun.
But anyway, now that we've gotten over the deck explanation, let's see how the deck works. Yeah. So now, let's quickly talk about how do you play the deck. I mean, if you have a keen eye and you have followed what has been happening on the field, I think you can already somewhat guess how this goes.
Let's finish this quickly.
Always start on Keqing, unless you are afraid that your opponent... Well, for example, if your opponent is playing double Pyro, they have a Thunder Manifestation or something, then you do not want to start on Keqing. But for example, in this match, my opponent starts first. They are on Mona, but the follow-up from Mona, it's either gonna be a Lanyan or Hazo skill. Hazo skill has a prepare. There's no way that's going to be a fast attack since they have done no swirling by that point. And otherwise, this skill only does 1 damage, normal attack 1 damage, normal attack 1 damage, normal attack and the skill both do 1 damage. To put it simply, in this case, our Keqing is safe. I mean, the biggest damage they can do is a surprise weapon with, you know, the... I think it's Ancient Courtyard, Arcane Guard, or Double Golden House, for example. Like, a weapon is the biggest deal of damage in this game that the opponent can do to Keqing. But if they had, like, for example, Double Pyro, Thunder Manifestation, start on Kirara, do a Kirara skill, so that the Lightning Probe or whatever high damage skill the opponent is doing goes on to Kirara, then switch to Keqing. And most of the time, if you start the game, you are the... Oh wait, I start first in this match. And well, never mind. If you start first, start with Keqing and do the skill. The only time you do not want to do that beginning is if the opponent is playing Thunder Manifestation, because you do not want the Lightning Probe thingy onto Keqing. And that's all. You want to do Keqing skill round 1. That is the like main goal of round 1. Everything else is like, doesn't really matter. You can do Eremite skill, you can do setup, but the only important part on round 1 is doing the Keqing skill. Because you want to have the Lightning Silhouette in hand, ready to go. By the way, I just... Yelan Gunner. I mean, at least they have the Yelan profile picture, but... If you're such a big Gunner for her, why aren't you playing her?
Be a good audience, won't you?
There are still quite a few good Yelan decks out there. Let's keep our distance from that devious character on that we are facing here. So, as you saw there, round 2, go for the Eremite Burst. You do not need to go further than that. So yeah, there you are. So once again, saw the talent card in action. We do some dice tuning here because, I mean, because Lanya now has a weapon, we want to take her out.
Rings no more.
But yes, round 2, go for Eremite Burst. Once again, you are free to do setup. But usually if you do setup, you want to end on Kirara because, you know, you don't want to lose the value from the talent card. And usually round 2, if you stay on Eremite, there's a quite big likelihood that Eremite gets taken out. Of course, in this game we don't really do any setup. This is a pure attack gameplay. And then, well, in this game we already we've been fighting from round 1. And that's actually like one of the better parts of this deck. You can do just that. You can do setup both round 1 and round 2. Or you can just continuously fight. Of course, if you do the fighting, as we do in this game, you are at the mercy of your dice. You can see here, I mean, I can do a normal attack with Keqing. Of course, we do have the technique, which I believe we do get. We take advantage of in this match. Of course, we also got lucky with the Providence Mystic Soup there. Yes, as I remember, we simply play the technique here. Like that, and you can see it's a perfect way to finish off opponents' struggling characters. And with that, the Gunner is down, on to the next one. Now against Elise and the Fat Yumkasaurus. Now that I've gotten all of the explanation out of the way, here we just get to see a simple code. In this game I do believe I do some setup actually.
Let's go.
Once again we are starting with Keqing. Actually, why did I put that? And the first action we do is of course a Keqing skill.
Incoming.
Our opponent doing setup of their own, no surprise there. It's a Yungasaurus deck after all. They try to fish for the lightning silhouette there, but luckily we had the talent card in hand and that gets stolen instead.
Our bond is strong.
Here you can see round 1, simple setup. Because of the passive skill of gaining energy whenever from the Eremite, there's really no need to go in round 1 with Eremite. Of course we are also using Tada so that if the Eremite does get on, you know, 8 HP and you are able to get the passive proc, you can just play one of the Tadas to get that extra energy. Here we fish for the Eremite talent. Unfortunately we got the Keqing's talent instead, but still there's no harm in playing Storm Terror Slayer because once again it discounts the Lightning Silhouette. Our opponent is doing, you know, Yungasaurus shenanigans there. Here you can see this is why we have the Tada. Also a quick mention, you could very well, instead of Fresh Wind of Freedom, I'd say almost any arcane card works. I mean, Covenant of Rock, it's probably hard to get value outside of the technique. Ancient Courtyard is questionable, like for example, I only have one weapon in this deck. So, you know, I mean, if you run double weapons for Keqing, maybe Ancient Courtyard. But you know, almost any arcane card works with this deck.
Be a good audience, won't you?
I went with the aggressive approach of using Fresh Wind of Freedom, since this is an aggressive deck. Here we are of course getting more discounts on the Lightning Silhouette, and since they are on bird, of course we want to threaten to take it out. And for whatever reason our opponent does not heal when they have a 3 HP Yumkasaurus, and I still have 2 dice and a bunch of cards like this right here, this is a beginner mistake. As you can see there, Providence comes down.
Don't blink.
Of course I was so excited here that I completely forgot to play Gamblers on the Keqing, but it doesn't really matter. And hey, I think that's gonna be all for today. I'll see you all next time. Oh god, it's the Gunnar again. And they're playing all children.